Grab a pint, grab your lineup. We're about to tap into fantasy. Welcome back to Tap Into Fantasy, the podcast with a professional fantasy mind and an amateur beer palate. I'm Lance Gandy. You can find me on X at LG_fantasy. Alright guys, welcome to the first episode of the Friday Pour, the only fantasy show where I'm risking my taste buds for your lineup decisions. Today I'm cracking open a Kronenbourg 1664 Blanc for the very first time. Will it be crisp and refreshing, or will it belong on the waiver wire of beers? While I figure that out, we'll dive into two players at each position who I think will crush it this week, and two who are destined to leave your fantasy score looking flat. Each Friday, we sip, we laugh, and we figure out which players are worth raising a glass to. So grab your favorite chair, grab your lineups, grab your beer, and let's toast. May the best drafts of your past be the worst of your future. Let's tap in. Okay, like I said, I'll be trying the Kronenbourg 1664 Blanc. The brewery calls it a hazy, citrusy wit beer with a dash of French joie de vivre. That was terrible. I apologize. I had to look up what that actually meant, and it means joy of living. So I lost a little respect for the beer after they said that. Don't get arrogant about your beer. Let's hope the taste makes up for that French brashness. Time to dive into the collective wisdom of beer reviewers, who clearly spend more time on Untappd than in the gym. These are real Untappd reviews. Welcome to the scrolls of the booze realm. Okay, here is the first review that's translated from German and French. It's a mixture. A pleasantly good beer by French standards. Viva la bière! Everyone hates the French, don't they? Good beer by French standards. It was obviously a German who gave this review who thinks beer is a food group. Then he writes, Viva la bière in French. I do have to say, I think that's my new battle cry after I try a new beer each episode. Even if it's a bad beer, just Viva la bière! Okay, well, I have got another juicy review waiting to be torn apart later in the episode. If you're enjoying the chaos, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a beer, a boom, or a bust. So let's see if this beer lives up to the hype or should be sent back to France with a strongly worded letter. Viva la bière! Sorry, I won't do that again, I promise. Okay, it's time for the opening draft where beers are judged harshly and scrutinized beyond all reason. Unless I like them, then I'll just yell, Viva la bière! Okay, I promise I wouldn't do that. I promise again. So today, like I said, we have the Kronenbourg 1664 Blanc. It's a wit beer. The Kronenbourg brewery was founded in 1664. It's the biggest brewery in France, which is kind of like being the tallest baguette. Impressive, but still French. The brewery says this beer is modern, fruity, and refreshing. So I call it the beer equivalent of a French influencer on Instagram. Do you have a favorite beer or one you think will ruin my weekend? Drop me a suggestion and I'll put my liver on the line for science. Email the show at tapintofantasy@gmail.com and it may just find itself on my next episode and on the big beer board on the website. So last week I tried a Weltenberger Kloster Anno 1050 and gave it a pour score of Brown Sugar Whisper Malty Hug. A true representation of an Oktoberfest beer with a little swift kick of brown sugar on the end. Okay, if you want to follow all of my beer ventures on the show, Just follow me on Untappd at Tap Into Fantasy. Let's have beer selfie standoffs. Okay, so I will go ahead and pour this wit beer and see what those sneaky French have up their sleeves. So today I'm using my Community Beer 8th Anniversary Stange glass. That's how I was told it was pronounced. I don't know. Um, yeah, so we're rolling with that. So let's go ahead and pour it. Actually, maybe it was Stange? Stange. I don't remember, but it's something like that. All right, we are pouring, and that is not going well. Good Lord, that's fizzy. All right, I'm gonna have to wait a second to drink this one. That's a lot of head. We're gonna sit back and let this cool down a bit. If I drank this right now, it'd be like a Belgian dip, just head all over my nose. Okay, I finally think it's gotten to where I can take a sip. That took forever. This head just doesn't go away. All right, let's try it. So I've had the Kronenbourg 1664 before, just not the Blanc. The regular 1664 is just a really nice kind of uh, normal European pale lager. This one so much different, very citrusy, very sweet. A lot of the reviews I looked at said it was sort of artificial tasting. I kind of see what they mean. Like, I don't love the artificial citrus. Kind of tastes like they poured some Sunny D in there. Um, yeah, this is definitely the beer for that friend who only drinks Mike's Hard on draft night. FYI, I was that friend 15 years ago. I've come a long way. All right, well, I will keep sipping this thing and trying to will it to be better. Now, this is the first Friday Pour episode. I'm going to be giving you two players that should boom and two players that should bust for every position for the Sunday and Monday games. You can find my full rankings every week on tapintofantasy.com. I have week 1 rankings up in all scoring types, as well as defense, kickers, and all those fun, exciting positions. Okay, let's start at QB. The best streamer this week is pretty obvious, but I have to go with him anyways. It's Trevor Lawrence. The Jags get the man who made Baker Mayfield QB3 last year. A generational talent in Travis Hunter and this Carolina defense that was disgusting last year. Historically bad is the right phrase. If you looked up doormat in the dictionary, it just shows the Panthers defense waving people through. Like, one of the most notable stats is that Jacksonville ran the least amount of plays per game last year. Tampa Bay was 9th. They could run around 5 more plays per game this year. That's huge for Trevor. He has elite pass catching talent, and Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, and even De'Ami Brown can be a dynamic third receiver. Cohen drew up a super potent running game last year with the Bucks, but the Jags don't really have the horses the Bucks had on the offensive line or the running back room. I mean, the offensive line is below average at best, and Bucky Irving had like godlike vision, and they just don't have anyone like that. They're going to have to pass the ball a ton to move the offense, and the screen game will act like an extension of their running game. Another thing Cohen was ridiculously effective at last year. Even after they spent up in free agency on players like Trayvon Merrick and Tershawn Wharton, the Panthers are still a projected bottom 3 defense. Like, yards per offensive play last year, the Panthers were worst at 6.0. Second worst, the Jags at 5.9. This is a shootout you want to get in on. I would start him over Drake May, Jordan Love, and even Brock Purdy. The second boom QB I want to highlight is the player on the other side of the ball, Bryce Young. I've talked plenty this offseason how he's one of my sleeper QBs of the year, but he gets the second worst defense, like I said, from last year with the Jags. Like, check this out. They forced 9 turnovers last year. The Steelers and the Vikings forced 33 for reference. I don't expect them to be that horrifically bad, but they're bottom 5 in talent still. And like I said, the Panthers defense is probably even worse. So this is just going to be a high-flying game with lots of points. From week 12 on last year, Bryce was 9th in scoring among QBs. He now gets a top 10 pick thrown into the mix in Teteroa McMillan. So just expect good things in his second year in this offensive system. I'd start him over Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, and Justin Fields. Okay, time to break down some quarterbacks who will put up numbers so low you'll start Googling if the XFL is back. Let's start with Justin Fields of the New York Jets. He's going up against the always hard-nosed Steelers defense. We just got news that Elijah Vera Tucker, probably their best offensive lineman, is going to be out for the year. The offensive line gelling into one of the best units in the NFL is kind of what this offense had to be built on, and now that's already crumbling. The pass catchers are some of the worst in football after Garrett Wilson, and Justin Fields has never thrown for more than 17 touchdowns in a season. He now goes up against the team that gave up the 4th least rushing yards to QBs last year. That's how Fields has any chance to be a starter, is to run and run some more. The Jets are 31st this week in projected points, and that was with Elijah Vera Tucker, so I'm not even sure where the fantasy points are going to come from. This is going to be a defensive, grinded-out game that you want to stay away from. I would start Michael Penix, Bryce Young, and Tua Tagovailoa ahead of him this week. Let's give you guys one more QB who will fall on his face this week. So Jared Goff is going into a tough environment, playing outdoors, away from home, has a new offensive coordinator, and is going up against a team that was top 10 in net yards per pass attempt in the Green Bay Packers. Oh yeah, and they added a guy named Micah Parsons, if you've ever heard of him. The age-old debate of whether Goff can play outdoors rears its head. Here are the splits. In 2024, the splits were much closer than they were in previous seasons. He averaged 20 points indoors and 19.6 outdoors, although he only scored 9.6 points in Green Bay last year. However, basically every single year of his career, he's been considerably worse outdoors and on the road. I don't think he's going to be a 0, but there's better plays in a 1 QB league, like Bryce Young or Tua. This episode is powered by Dubby Energy. It's my go-to for a clean boost with 0 crash and 0 jitters, whether I'm grinding out drafts or just need that mid-afternoon push. No junk, no guilt, just focus. Hit the link in the description and use promo code TAPINTOFANTASY for 10% off. Dubby brings the energy. You bring the winning picks. Alright, it's running back time. Which ones are going to shine to start the year? My money is on James Conner. People have been predicting his demise or just a nasty timeshare for years now. He just keeps producing. Trey Benson isn't going to force a timeshare. He'll be in on a handful of plays. This is still Conner's backfield, and the Cardinals like to run the ball down opponents' throats. Arizona was 22nd in pass rate last year at 55.31%. Conner just had the best season of his career. Despite seeing the 6th most stacked boxes with 8+ defenders, he averaged 4.6 per carry, had over 1,000 yards. They're 5.5-point favorites against a New Orleans team that's starting the worst QB in the league in Spencer Rattler. The Saints gave up the 2nd most rushing yards in the league last year, over 2,400 yards. The game script and the defense suggest they're just going to run it a million times and run it well. He's a top 12 back this week. If you need someone to be a decent flex this week, you could definitely do worse than Ramondre Stevenson. I know Travion Henderson is the shiny new toy, and I do have Henderson ranked ahead of him, but the Raiders' front 7 is now one of the worst in football. They lost their starting DT, their 2 linebackers, a safety, and a cornerback this offseason. I expect Stevenson to be the starter, and have the most carries this game. And he should also be featured on the goal line given he has about 20 pounds on Henderson. They're 2.5-point favorites at home, and new head coach Mike Vrabel just wants to pound the ball. This is his moment to keep the starting job, and I think he has a decent chance at finding the end zone in this one. Okay, it's time for some nasty matchups at the running back position. First up, Tony Pollard. The first test for the new look Titans is about as dreadful as it gets from the dominating Denver defense. This is in Denver, so you have the defense, which was already incredible last year, but seemingly got better, and you have to fight the altitude also. They're projected for the lowest amount of points on the slate and have a rookie QB with a below average set of playmakers. That's a recipe for a fun 5-point game from Pollard. Is that what you want in your lineup? The upside is just brutal. The downside, brutal. If you have Travis Etienne, just start him instead. On the other side of the field, the new fun thing is RJ Harvey. I wasn't that high on him coming out of college, but Sean Payton has been man-crushing on him all summer long. However, J.K. Dobbins is tops on the depth chart for now, and I do expect him to start the game and get the most rushes. It's a similar set of circumstances to the Travion Henderson or Ramondre Stevenson dynamic, except I expect J.K. Dobbins to actually outscore Harvey, and the Titans' defense is quietly pretty legit. They allowed the 8th lowest yards per offensive play last year. However, their cornerback group looks rough. I expect the Broncos to be up big at halftime and for them to just keep running the ball. And Harvey is still working out some vision and pass protection issues. They're going to trust Dobbins to run this game out. I would start Dobbins and Mason over Harvey this week. So make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. That way, even if your QB throws 4 picks and your running back's legs fall off, you still have a little joy waiting in your feed twice a week. All right, time to dive back into the Scrolls of the Booze Realm with another Untappd review. So this is a review that comes from a restaurant in Norway. The review is 5 stars and is a young, blonde-haired woman holding the whole beer glass with her mouth and drinking it with no hands. In the comments of the review, a guy named Philip with an F says in Swedish, "Haha, are you going to give everyone 5 out of 5? Crazy." This girl comes back with, "But I love all things beer. How can I rate it less than 5? That, my friends, is what I like to call 100% keeper. You put a ring on that as soon as you can and reap the rewards for a whole lifetime. Her name is Victoria, and Victoria is going on the Tap Into Fantasy Wall of Fame for her beer takes. Viva la birre!" Sorry, I had to do it for that one. It was justified. Okay, let's forge ahead to some wide receivers I like betting on for Week 1. Emeka Egbuka is in an eruption spot in Week 1. Like the over-under for the Falcons game is at 47.5 points, third highest on the week. They easily hit that over in both games last year. Baker Mayfield threw 6 touchdowns in those 2 games. It's a rivalry, and this Falcons defense was bottom 5 in percentage of drives giving up a score, 43.7%. The new defensive coordinator for the Falcons is Jeff Ulbrich. He's a man coverage dude. That's what he wants to be at his core. So Mike Evans is going to be going up usually against their best cornerback in A.J. Terrell. So Egbuka will be moved inside and out to just get the best matchups for him. There's no Chris Godwin. There's no Jalen McMillan. It's going to be a very condensed target share. So just feel great about starting him. If you're in a tough spot in Week 1 with your receivers and you have Jerry Jeudy on your bench, fear not, for he should be started in all leagues this week. This Cincinnati defense, obviously pretty tough to watch last year, which is why they scored as many points as they did and didn't make the playoffs. The offense was a juggernaut, and Joe Burrow would have gotten MVP votes if they were even competent. They could be a little better this year, but they're still probably bottom 8 in talent, and their best player still isn't even on the field in Trey Hendrickson. That means this profiles as an old-fashioned shootout. I don't know where the pass rush is going to come from for Cincinnati, and if you give the statue Joe Flacco time, he can still fling it. Judy should be in for a nice day of garbage time when they're down 3 scores in the second half. Another bonus, I think Cedric Tillman could be a decent flex option this week for the exact same reasons. So this is sort of a layup pick for a bust this week, but like I said with Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley and the Titans are about to get squashed. This Denver defense is a juggernaut, and Ridley will be lined up against the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain. They're away. It's Cam Ward's first game as a pro. They won't be able to run the ball effectively, and there's really no good pass catchers outside of Calvin Ridley right now. This could legitimately be a shutout. So I would find it any way you can not to start Ridley. I would go with Jamison Williams, Jacoby Myers if he plays, even Stephon Diggs over him. So I would put Garrett Wilson as the last bust pick, and he definitely should. But I've already talked about Justin Fields and the long day that offense is going to have. Instead, I'll shout out Devontae Adams against the Houston Texans. Look, Devontae is no doubt still a good player, but there were definitely some signs of a declining player last year. Like, did you know he turns 33 years old before the end of the year? That's a little scary, and there's some chance that he hits a cliff, similar to Allen Robinson when they signed him in 2022. He'll be lining up against one of the best corners in all of football in Derek Stingley most often, because he's going to be primarily the X receiver in this offense. Alaric Jackson is now back at left tackle for the Rams after a blood clot situation during camp, but he hasn't practiced much at all and barely fits over the line of good enough left tackle. Matt Stafford, everyone knows, has been dealing with old man back all camp and hasn't gotten many reps with Adams. He won't be able to move even a little bit, and I'm still worried about this offensive line. This Texans defense is top 3 good. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. I expect Matt Stafford and this offense to be in preseason mode, and Adams could just be a decoy to get Puka the ball. Do me a solid and leave a review for the pod. It's free. It helps new listeners find the podcast, and it might just keep me from switching to reviewing hard seltzers. Okay, tight ends are the least fun position in fantasy, so I'm just going to shout out one boom and one bust. A player I think you could stream this week is Hunter Henry from the Patriots. From week 6 on last year, that's when Drake May was starting. Hunter Henry was 6th most targets among tight ends. They still don't have enviable receivers, so Henry could easily be the second target among this group, and that's exactly what you're looking for with late round tight ends. The Raiders shed a ton of talent on the defensive side this offseason and gave up over 1,000 yards to tight ends last year. Henry is a super safe play. I would even start him over Sam Laporta this week. So I am very high on Colson Loveland as a player and for the rest of the season, but week 1 isn't the time to throw him in your lineup. He's going to have to earn it, and I think Cole Kmet spells him for an annoying amount of snaps. The Bears are running a whole new offense, going up against a top 5 defense in the Vikings. There's just not going to be many touchdowns to go around, and Minnesota only gave up 3 to tight ends anyway last year. We need to see how many routes Loveland actually runs. Like, anything above 60% would be a win. I would play Zach Ertz and even Kyle Pitts above him this week, especially if Darnell Mooney can't go. Okay, so I hope you got something useful out of this boom and bust week 1 breakdown. I'll do one more sip of this Kronenbourg 1664 Blanc and make my conclusion. Okay, I think I'm putting this 14th on the big beer board right in front of the Christmas cookie ale that had no cookie in it. Very disappointing. The final pour score for this wit beer is Coriander. I hardly knew her. It was very artificial tasting and sweet and not my favorite. Okay, but that's going to do it for this episode of Tap Into Fantasy. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps the show find other degenerates like you. Hit me up on X at LG_fantasy or email at tapintofantasy@gmail.com with any start-sit questions you have this week. Thanks for tapping in, and until next time, happy pours, happy scores.